Greetings, fellow attendees at the River Management Symposium from Mountains to Creek to Metro Canals. The name of our presentation is Retrofitting the Watershed to Restore the River. My name is David Hirschmann, and I'm the principal of Hirschmann Water and Environment. And I have here my colleague.
Hello, I'm Kip Mumaw. I'm the principal engineer for Ecosystem Services.
Kip and I are going to be tag teaming this presentation, and we are both located in Charlottesville, Virginia, just up the road from where the in-person conference was originally slated to happen. I'm going to start off with a little bit of background about why retrofitting is so important to restore watersheds and improve the health of rivers. What you see here is a graph that goes back a couple decades, actually, based on research from the Center for Watershed Protection. And it's a relationship between watershed impervious cover here, and of course, impervious cover is streets and parking lots and rooftops. And on this axis is stream quality as a kind of understood as a multi-metric approach. And stream quality could be physical things such as the degree of erosion, could be biological things such as the biological macroinvertebrate community or fish community, and it could be chemical things such as water quality. But one of the things that's clear from many studies is that as watershed impervious cover increases, stream quality or stream health decreases. So the question is, in a developing or developed watershed, is it possible to break the cycle using stormwater practices or stream restoration or other types of restoration practices? And that's exactly what Kip and I are going to talk about today. One of the things that we have going for us in the Chesapeake Bay watershed is this total maximum daily load, or more colloquially known as the pollution diet. And you can kind of see the diet there in terms that we all understand in terms of food. The watershed implementation plans, or WIPs, are what each state in the Chesapeake Bay watershed uses to define the practices to achieve this pollution diet. We are under the gun here in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The baseline year for our water quality metrics, which are nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, the baseline is 2009, and we have a goal in the TMDL to meet our targets by the year 2025. So we have some ambitious reduction goals, which translate to many practices across the landscape and including in the stream corridors. Now, one of the things that we have to do in order to meet this goal is to do retrofits. And retrofits are either going to a stormwater practice that was built in the old days. It's there, maybe an old detention pond, probably not doing a lot with regard to water quality or even habitat, but it can be changed. It can be modified and improved to perform better across all those functions. So the retrofits can be small, as you can see here on the left, individual residential types of rain garden things, or they can be bigger, such as this stormwater detention retrofit. And we're going to talk about things that operate at different scales. One of the constructs that we like to use in terms of thinking about retrofitting a watershed is the rooftop to river. A drop of water will fall on many individual rooftops, as you can see here in this photograph from Richmond, Virginia in 1966. But what I like about it is it shows a relationship between the rooftops and the streets right here to the James River, which is down at the bottom of the hill. So the rooftop to river means that we try to intercept the water, the runoff, we try to store it as it's on its journey from each individual rooftop through the conveyance system and finally down to the river corridor. So the latter part of this presentation is breaking this down a little bit. I'm going to talk about the rooftop and the conveyance system, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kip to talk about the river corridor itself, and then bringing home some lessons from all these implementation experiences that we've had here in the Chesapeake Bay. So let's start at the rooftop. Of course, this is the smallest little packet of water that we can intercept and treat and hopefully improve the water quality as well as the quantity of runoff generated. Obviously, we have things that reduce the runoff right at the source, like a vegetated roof. We can use even simple landscaping or conservation landscaping practices to intercept the runoff from small drainage areas like rooftops and driveways. And we can even do things like these stormwater planters, which take the runoff directly from the rooftop. The other thing that we can do is after the water is moving down in the drainage system a little bit, in a lot of our already developed watersheds, we already have some type of conveyance or stormwater treatment system. And you can see here, this is one that was probably dates back to the 1970s, a good old dry detention pond, and the water just shooting right along this concrete ditch from the inlet, which is 100 acres in this point, right to the outlet structure here. So not a lot of treatment, not a lot of storage, except during our bigger flows. So what can we do with old infrastructure like this to enhance its function for water quality as well as other functions? And so in this case, we took that water, we lengthened the flow path, and we added a lot of wetland vegetation. So we slowed the water down, created a lot more storage, especially for those smaller storms or more routine storms, and added some habitat features by converting it to a wetland. So that's an example of retrofitting along the conveyance system. This is another example. This is from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where they've done a lot of retrofitting, and this conveyance system is right along the roadway, which of course is a major source of runoff and polluted runoff. So they use the street side fire retention areas to capture and treat runoff. I'm going to turn it over to Kip now, and he's going to talk about the stream corridor.
Great, thank you very much, Dave. And now for our kind of next stage of the water droplet journey. As we've seen, there are a lot of practices that can be placed in the watershed at the individual parcel level and then collectively at these detention basins. And then as that water droplet comes down to the stream corridor, we have some new sources of pollutants, and then we also have some additional opportunities. And so here in the picture that you're looking at on the left is a impaired stream called Meadow Creek in Charlottesville, Virginia. And you can see the 15 to 20 foot eroding stream banks. The studies have shown that up to 70% of the sediment that is discharged downstream actually originates from stream bank erosion. And with this additional source of sediment and pollutants downstream, the watershed practices that we're talking about may not address that entirely. It could reduce the volume, but we still have this additional source due to legacy impacts from land clearing, historical land clearing, and forestry practices, agricultural practices, and development that send this sediment down to the valley. So you can see on the right here, after restoration, picture of the stream, the restored stream, and you can see some different attributes, including greater floodplain connection, a stable riparian buffer versus the collapsing trees that we see on the left-hand side. A little bit more about this watershed. This is a 5.77 square mile drainage area, and so it's a rather large drainage area for the types of streams that are restored, but it's still a lower order stream system. It's a 40% impervious cover. So if you go back to the impervious cover model that we were looking at, we would expect to see impairments, and there are impairments in the stream, both for aquatic life and also bacteria. And downstream to the Rivanna River and the James River watershed, and then the Chesapeake Bay, we see those same sediment impairments along with some additional impairments for nutrients downstream. In the photo to the left, you see again kind of that demonstrating what can be done in the stream corridor, such as floodplain connectivity. And so these are the opportunities that we have in the stream corridor versus what we have upstream in the landscape, in the watershed. We have the opportunity to slow the water down, again, similar to practices upstream. We have the possibility to take some of that flood flow, those storm events, and get them onto a floodplain where we can see denitrification, other pollutant removal, just deposition and sediment storage that can occur there. The picture to the right shows 3 years post restoration and a wetland that is developed in this lowland area where flood flow is distributed to. So the million-dollar question is, how much retrofitting is enough to make a difference? And as most scientists and practitioners like to say, it depends. The watershed, each watershed is different and has different characteristics, geological characteristics, as well as different impacts to water quality itself. And so as we look to each watershed and are looking at what are the specific impairments downstream and what are the specific opportunities that we might have in the watershed, an individual watershed management plan has to be crafted to identify what sort of practices are going to take place, and then appropriate monitoring thereafter to ensure that the practices are actually effective. And that's what's been done. Numerous studies have been conducted to look at this effectiveness of upstream retrofitting and stream corridor restoration. And there are several success stories, and then there are also several situations where that restoration or the level of retrofitting in a watershed wasn't enough. But it is at least a proof of concept that it can be done, and we can reduce the impact of that impervious cover and the downstream impairments for sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other pollutants that we might see in our watershed. So with that, a few of the take-homes that we'd like to leave you with, essentially that these urban watersheds do change the hydrologic regime, and so we do see this increased peaks at higher frequencies, lowered base flows, and that effect can't fully be addressed at the watershed scale, at the rooftop side of things. And then similarly, or conversely, the polluted runoff and the water that the stream corridor is receiving cannot be wholly treated within the stream corridor. So what we see there is we really need a watershed approach. We need both stream corridor restoration, and we also need the upstream watershed retrofits. And as we just went over, the how much is enough question is maybe unanswerable in a macro view, but on each individual watershed scale, we can start to approach an understanding of what might leave our rivers in good health through connecting green infrastructure together with restoration plans downstream, and looking at some of these co-benefits and actions that we need to take on in the landscape and within the watershed, such as floodplain planning, looking at what sort of impacts climate change and changing weather patterns as well might impact our management of stormwater and our rivers. So that concludes our presentation, and just appreciate your time and hope this has been informative.
So long, everybody.